Good evening, campers. This is your head counselor, Shelby, and tonight it's Campfire Stories. So, get comfy, turn on your flashlights, and get ready for some new stories submitted by your fellow campers and some old stories presented by your favorite counselors and maybe a DJ and possibly Bruce, that other counselor. We'll see. I'm feeling charitable. Honestly, I feel the spirit around this campfire tonight. So, let's get started.
Hey campers, your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete here. I'm going to be submission from Purple Nurple of Romero Row. This is their poem that they made. I chewed and chewed and chewed using my nail file, and I filed and filed and filed. It took me 5 hours of blood and sweat, but I finally chewed off my own arm and could escape without waking up that thing on the bed. I grabbed my shoes and bolted out the door. Lesson learned. Things through beer goggles are bigger and uglier in real life. I remember saying this to myself a few years back. I had 2 arms then.
Another story that we've shared before in the past, but I don't think we've told it before. And that is the observers. You know that feeling that you get like you're being watched when you walk between the bunkhouses and the showers at night during camp? Well, it's not Counselor Bruce, but it very well could be one of the observers. Nobody seems to know their motives, but what is clear is that they are everywhere and nowhere at once, seeming to drift in and out of the liminal spaces of camp and one's mind simultaneously. Attempts have been made by researchers of all types, paranormal, physicists, even the occult, yet no concrete evidence of their existence, or a proper debunking, for that matter. Some say that the older sections of camp seem to attract their watchful gaze, as if they're waiting for something or someone to return. Pray that you never do something that angers them. And know that if you do, they will see and act before you even realize what you've done. So, campers, remember, there are more vengeful spirits than head counselor Shelby at camp. Tread lightly. Now, we have a pretty accomplished published author camping with us this summer, Nick, and they have provided a poem representing Cropsy's Corner. Unfortunately, I have to say that. It's quite good work for a Cropsy's Corner cabin member. I'll give you credit for that where it's due, but this one is known as Sirens Unleashed, and it was originally published in Horoscope, a Zodiac Anthology, Volume 1. Mara loved the little vase she found for a mere 15 cents in a dollar, so she swept it back to her place, all because she felt it had called her. It sat on her shelf, surrounded by shells, as she succumbed to slumber. Her dreams brought her to the depth of the sea, not yet knowing her error. The clawed hand held fast to her knee as she was descended into terror. And deep in her dream, she attempted to scream, but her lungs only filled with water. Mara soon sprung awake. Coughing, she came to the surface. She falsely thought she was safe, but had only gone from flame to furnace. Submerged in her bath, she soon realized the wrath that had been unleashed with her thrift store purchase. Those clawed hands found their way, cutting into skin and muscles. They began to drag her away. Despite her attempts to struggle, the woman was overcome by a wave, pulled down to her grave, leaving behind only salt and bubbles. Thanks, Nick. I'm not buying any thrift store vases. Just stay away from pottery in general. It's usually haunted as shit.
Hey campers, Bruce here with another Campfire Tales story time. This next one is also from Romero Row, this time by Kai Wolf. A cute little critter took our friend. I found this note taped to the underside of the bunk bed above mine. A few days into camp, me and some bunkmates decided to take a walk around the campgrounds. Our way back, one of the others pointed out something in the tree lines, asking what that was. It was a small animal, looked like it had no business living in the woods. Its bright white fur didn't exactly blend in with its surroundings. Another guy, Alex, seemed a little too insistent that we keep going. Told us to stay away from it. I wish we'd listened to him. As we argued over what kind of animal it was, one kid started approaching it. Chris, I think. We told him it might bite or something, but he ignored us. The animal came out from his hiding spot. Before any of us could stop him, he picked it up. We all remained silent, waiting for something to happen, but nothing did. It was friendly and harmless. We took turns petting it, and it made us sort of sound like a cat purring. Some of us suggested putting it back, but Chris already decided to keep it. Things were pretty normal at first. It was sort of like our cabin's mascot. But before long, Chris got really protective of his new pets. It's like he was obsessed. We were able to drag him to camp activities for a day or two, but we eventually stopped trying. It got to the point where he wouldn't even talk to us, only that creature. Hell, he wouldn't even acknowledge us at all. About a week into camp, there was supposed to be a hike. He, of course, stayed in the cabin, but the rest of us went. The counselors never showed up, so Alex convinced us just to head back. When we got to the cabin, Chris wasn't there. Alex told us not to bother, but we looked for him all over camp. We couldn't find him. He was just gone. So was that thing. Alex told us it wasn't the first time this happened. The critter shows up, one of the campers grows attached, the camper goes missing. We asked him why he didn't tell us that sooner, and he says that there's no point. It can't be stopped. A few days later, the animal showed up again, in Alex's arms. We asked him what he was doing, especially after what he told us, but he just brushed it off, saying we were overreacting. How could such a cute, innocent creature possibly make an entire human go missing? I don't know why we didn't tell the counselor. I guess we thought they wouldn't believe us, or that we could handle it on our own. We made sure to have someone keep an eye on him at all times, but it wasn't enough. This morning, he was gone. So was a kid on watch duty last night. There are things left behind, door wide open. We didn't bother looking for him. We tried telling someone, but with the campers going missing, a cute little critter took our friend wasn't exactly top priority. Maybe someday someone will figure it all out. Not me, though. I'm never coming back. But least I can do is leave this here for future campers. If you see some small, cute animal that you've never seen, well, pray that you aren't the one that it chooses.
And now, we have a story from Nettie of Cropsy's Corner, known as the Plague Mask Murderer of Witchwood Forest. There is a legend of a man called the Plague Mask Murderer of Witchwood Forest. The legend is it that the plague doctor was very sadistic, and he would medically treat those who lived in the rural communities in and just outside the forest. These families were the poor, the farmers, and those that preferred to live deep in the forest alone. Some say what he did was mercy killing, but it's really hard to believe that he was doing mercy killings on the healthy. Instead of going and helping these people, he decided to help spread the plague. He would go to healthy families for basic medical care and then infect them. He'd also go treat those with the plague, but he would also infect the remaining parts of the family. He did this until the entire area of these small villages inside the forest would wind up dead. The story is that he did not die, or if he did, something is still out there. Now, some have said that they've seen him lurking in the forest around the time of the solar solstice, which is when the sun is just starting to stay out just a bit later, and the sunsets are gold and red. He's said to be wearing the suit of the plague doctors from the 1300s. The long-nosed mask, the black coat, the black gloves. In his right hand, he'd be carrying a Victorian bone saw. The saw was rusty, with some hair and blood still in the blade. I don't know how much of the story is true, but my research has shown that there have been missing people. I heard a story about a bunch of kids that decided to go camping in June of 1964. 3 girls and 3 boys, and a border collie named Scout. 2 of the girls and the boys were they were all sophomores at the local college, and the other girl and her younger sister were just townsfolk that came along. School had just ended the week before, so the whole group decided to be cool to spend the weekend camping before tourists started arriving for the summer. Unfortunately, most of the kids didn't come back that weekend. Actually, only one came back, and the dog. Some of the stories that she told were hard to believe. Her story is that they were hunted by a dark figure in the forest, and sometimes all they would see is the reflection of the moonlight off of what looked like a saw. Her friends did not come home. She said they disappeared one by one, and she just finally decided to run for it. It took 2 years to find the bodies. They were scattered across the forest, miles and miles from where they were originally camping. Some were just bones, some missing limbs. No one really knows what happened to the young girls and the young boys. All anyone knows is that why would they wander off? Why would they run away into the woods, never to be seen again? Why would they just leave the one survivor and the dog? Something's not right. She said, and she always has said, that if she didn't bring the dog, then she never would have made it out of the forest. The dog helped guide her and kept her company when she was scared. They, of course, say that this is all just a story, just a tale, but I think that there's something to it. Perhaps it is just a campfire story, but maybe the plague-masked murderer of Witchwood Forest could be sitting next to you. Who's to say? Thanks, Nettie. The Legend of the Woodsy Maniac. Perhaps you're familiar, but if not, this is probably the most famous of all of our local legends here at camp. And the origins are pretty interesting. So, basically, there was once this hermit that lived in the woods, a few miles away from camp. He had a cabin up on top of the cliffs overlooking the lake, and he loved it there, obviously. He doesn't like people, he loves living in the woods. But the forest that he lived in was getting turned into a national park. So, obviously, he didn't like that too much, and he really didn't like it when campers and hikers and other folks started walking through the woods where he lived. So, perhaps he took matters into his own hands, but people started going missing here and there that went into the woods, and the locals, of course, blamed the hermit for this, and they started calling this guy the Woodsy Maniac. So, it's fine, you know, it's a weird guy that lives in the woods, we're not going to worry about it. But then a group of kids goes missing after they came to camp for a week. So that was the final straw. A mob of police and the parents gathered and marched to the cabin in the middle of the woods there. But when they arrived, they saw something pretty horrific. Blood just pouring out of the house underneath it, coating all the rocks underneath the cabin and making them just too slippery to climb up. So, pretty horrifying. But to make things worse, as they stood there helplessly standing and staring up at this cabin, they saw the hermit. And he was just kind of cheerfully strolling around, whistling, but in his hand was a gas can. And he was spreading it all around the perimeter of the cabin. And then, all of a sudden, lights a match and tosses it, and the cabin just goes up. And then he just casually continues whistling and walks back inside like nothing happened. And the mob below couldn't do anything but just stand there helpless, dumbfounded, and watch. There's no calling the fire department. There's no putting out this fire. All they could do was agonize. And then hear the horrific screams coming from the cabin as it burnt to the ground of the children trapped inside. And the fire raged for hours, and by the next morning, it burnt completely to the ground. And they found the remains of the children, but oddly enough, they never found remains that could be identified as the hermit. And even now, all these years later, people still go missing in these woods. And some people still blame the Woodsy Maniac. Me personally, I would definitely avoid the place they call Slippery Rock, which was where his cabin was allegedly based, and I would stay out of the woods, day or night. We have a new legend to tell you from the Antona Valley. Now, I had DJ Ollie break into a storage closet. We were trying to find some more cool music to play on the radio station, but I lost my keys, or maybe I was never supposed to be in this part of the storage area. But regardless, had DJ Ollie help me pop the lock off this door, and I found some cool binders with stories in them. And this one seemed really cool, and I haven't seen it anywhere. And it's called the Electro Wraith. Local folklore tells of a spirit that haunts the forest, appearing during thunderstorms and causing electronic devices to malfunction. Hunters and hikers have reported eerie sightings of a glowing figure darting through the trees, accompanied by the smell of ozone and a crackle in the air of static electricity. Some believe that this Electro Wraith is a guardian of the forest that punishes those who disrespect nature or bring technology into its domain. Others think it might be a vengeful spirit of someone who was struck by lightning and is trying to exact revenge for their untimely death. But others suspect maybe it's some sort of experiment gone wrong, or an animal that we can't understand that's escaped explanation. Regardless, one of the telltale signs that the Electro Wraith is near is the malfunctioning of electronic equipment, static electricity, discharges, memory devices being cleared, cameras not working, cell phone signals dropping. It's strange. And it almost seems as if it knows when you're trying to capture it, and it will actively try to stop that. So, my advice to you, camper, is to keep that Game Boy in the cabin and maybe don't take any flashlights out in the woods at night. Just a thought.